In order to be able to work with nuclear weapons, you have to go through the Personnel Reliability Program, which is a set of psychological tests. They want to make sure that you're emotionally stable. They want to make sure that you're honest and don't have a history of lying. And they also want to make sure that you don't have any financial problems that might lead you to being blackmailed. So one could make an argument that the President of the United States would be ineligible to work with nuclear weapons in the Air Force. And yet, as Commander-in-Chief right now, President Trump has sole authority to authorize the use of a nuclear weapon. And I'm curious about your thoughts about this war power of sole authority, where it came from, and whether it still makes sense in the 21st century.
My thoughts on sole authority are influenced by my own experiences. One in particular I think is worth mentioning. Back many years ago during the Cold War, when I was not the Secretary of Defense, but the Undersecretary for Research and Engineering, I was awoken by a call at 3 o'clock in the morning. I sleepily picked up the phone. The voice on the other end identified himself as the general who was the watch officer that night for the North American Air Defense Command. And the first thing he said to me was that his computers were showing 200 ICBMs on the way from the Soviet Union to the United States. I'll tell you, when you get a phone call like that, you never forget it. He quickly went on to say that he was convinced his computers were in error. Why was he calling me? I was the Undersecretary for Research and Engineering. He was calling me because he wanted to know what the hell was wrong with his computers. So they had an answer for the president when he explained to him the next morning what had happened. Well, it took us several days to find out what had happened. But in fact, when I was Undersecretary, I got there were 2 such false alarms. 2 in a period of 4 years. That was one of them. One of the false alarms was the most dangerous. It was that when the shift changed that night at North American Air Defense Command, the new computer operator put what he thought was the operating tape in the computer. It turned out to be it was a training tape. And so the computer was showing a perfectly realistic scenario. It was designed to be realistic looking. And happily, we had a watch officer that night who recognized something was crazy and did not call the president. What if he had called the president? The president would have had 5, 6, 7 minutes perhaps to decide whether he should launch, on his sole authority, whether he should launch his ICBMs before they were destroyed in their silos. If it really was an attack, the advantage of that decision would be it would get our ICBMs off before they were destroyed in the silos. If it was not a real attack, if it was a false alarm, which in fact it was, then he would have inadvertently started a nuclear war. So the judgment or the decision of the president, and it was only the president, happens in the middle of the night, it was only the president to decide that. This is a bad system. It's a dangerous system, and we should not allow it to continue. So dealing with the sole authority question is perhaps one of the most important things the new Congress can do.